And next to Marcy is Ada Tai, who is a consultant and a teacher at McEwen College in HR and has her own consulting company. I know it sounds like it's impossible, but Ada says that she has almost 10 years experience. Must have started when you were 5. Oh, okay, it's the makeup. All right, we want the recipe, or at least I do. Certainly I do. She provides generalized HR consulting services, corporate training, and like I said, she does also teach at McEwen University and Metro Continuing Education in Edmonton.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all got some refreshments and got some fresh air. I did go outside. It looks really beautiful outside. So I know how this feels. Adult learner, been a long day, and some of you raised hands saying that you were that bird in the rain. So and outside looking that nice. I'll try to go through this as painless as possible so you get to go out and enjoy the sunshine. Just want to start off with a joke I saw a friend sent me over LinkedIn. A perfect brain has 2 sides, the left brain and the right brain. So the left brain has nothing right and the right brain has nothing left. So that's the perfect brain. And I didn't come with that kind of brain today. So hopefully I'll leave you with something right. Just want to give you a quick introduction of my background. Nicole already read through the bio. But I came to Canada as an international student, actually. And so I'm not going to tell you which year for you to guess my age, but quite a few years ago. I came as an international student, studied at University of Alberta, finished, and then my degree was actually not in HR at all. And then I did an HR certificate through the faculty extension in Ewing and started working in human resources for the last 10 years. I've been working in different organizations, different industries. And a year and a half ago, I just felt that it was too boring to work for corporations. And I thought I'm going to take on a different challenge. So I started my own consulting practice. And what I do is I provide HR generalist services and employee training. Plus, the unique side of my business is I do career planning and job search coaching for individuals and agencies. And so as you can probably see, I am the Gen Y HR professional. So Nicole was kind of right. She can't believe that I've been in HR for 10 years. The makeup does do justice. And I can share my tips with you, which makeup brand I use. But I've been in HR for 10 years, and I am still the Gen Y HR professional. And as a Gen Y HR professional, I believe in being pragmatic and being innovative. Especially in today's economy, we can't really progress without being innovative, because every company here represented has talked about that being cuts in terms of budget and resources and support. So even though our series is called HR in a Box series, actually I'm going to challenge you to think outside of the box a little bit and rethink about talent attraction from a completely different angle. So if you have not introduced yourself to your friends at the table, I highly recommend that you shake hands and introduce yourself with your beautiful names and what you do, because in the next 5 to 7 minutes, I'm going to ask you to discuss 3 questions at your table. Number 1 question, what are the top 2 challenges that your organization face in talent attraction? Number 2, what are top 2 contributing factors to these challenges? And last one is on a scale between 1 and 10, how well would you rate your organization's hiring and onboarding practice? So 5 to 7 minutes. Thank you. All right, so back to me. Let's hear some answers here. Maybe let me first ask you the 3rd question. So by show of fingers, how would you rate your organization does your hiring and onboarding process? So on a scale between 1 and 10, please show me your fingers. How would you rate? How would you rate your organization's hiring and onboarding process by showing off your fingers to me?
Yeah, so you can answer whatever you want.
All right. Okay. Good. Thank you for being honest. And for the first 2 questions, so let's start maybe with the table on my right-hand side. What would you consider as the top 2 challenges your organization faces in terms of attracting talents?
For the social profits, we said just being competitive versus industry. And I think industry, your biggest challenge would be specific people wanting to live here. Location, location, location.
Sounds like a realtor talking here. Okay, over here, who would like to volunteer?
Oh, gee. One of our challenges are paying the staff, the specialized staff, the rates in Fort Mac. Competitive rates, thank you.
Okay.
So that's a real challenge.
And the skill set in this area.
We hire a lot from away. We do a lot of interviewing for people. We bring people in for interviews just because we can't get them locally, right? So skill set is a big issue.
You are in the social profit, supporting the lower, is it the people with barriers in life, right?
We're into domestic violence and sexual
Okay.
assault. And
Okay, all right, so social workers. Okay, all right, thank you. So these are really good. Yeah?
I've got some
Okay.
comments here. So Volunteer Alberta says, challenges are wages and retention, top two contributing factors, funding mechanisms. Turnover in the sector is always high compared to the private or public sector. Regarding the scale, 9.5. And question to you, what do you mean by a list of items to help the process?
Don't answer it?
Disregard the last part of the question. The rest
Okay.
of it, though, for sure.
Thank you, that makes my life a lot easier. All right, so thank you for the answers from both tables. I'll keep your answers in mind, and hopefully I can address them throughout my presentation, and certainly welcome discussions towards at the end of the presentation as well. So today's topic is on talent attraction. I ask you to think outside the box and rethink about talent attraction. What exactly is talent attraction? By the textbook definition, it's really a combined effort of workforce planning first, and then branding the organization, and then recruit and select candidates, and on top of that is the onboarding experience. So my question is this all to it? Is this all to talent attraction? Does this guarantee we can hire the best people in the market? Not really. This is textbook definition. What's missing here, in my humble opinion, is actually the way how we attract people. We find a way to attract the people from the talent market that represents today's talent markets. Because we all know the way how we attract talents sort of determine the kind of talent that who will be attracted by us. So let's take a look at what has changed in terms of the workforce, in terms of the talent market. Technology has certainly changed where we work, how we work, and what kind of job we do. When you walk around newly developed office building, and this morning I had a discussion with another lady, so this is just going to be the trend, it's the way to be. You're going to see offices with big glass window, transparency, sunlight, natural sunlight coming into the office, lower cubicles, fewer closed door offices, even with closed doors, then maybe like a fishbowl with open glass doors. And they're really encouraging teamwork, transparency, dialogues, and people participating in decision-making process. And on top of that is encouraging team-based projects, a little bit less individual work than before. And what's also changed is that when you look around job postings, pick any job postings these days, very typical competencies that organizations are looking for, regardless if you're hiring for frontline customer service, labor position, back office admin support positions, or managerial positions. You see postings requiring qualifications such as organizational skills, multitasking skills, roll up the sleeves and can-do attitude. What does that really mean? It's by saying that organizations are expecting candidates to do more with less. But at the same time, we have the Gen Y entering the workforce looking for work-life balance. The research I've read is that with the younger generation entering the workforce, the way to attract and retain them, their number one thing they're looking for is work-life balance. And you're looking at, by 2020, North American, 50% of the workforce are going to be occupied by the Gen Y people. So Gen Y, there are so many different definitions. Some people call it millennial generation, some people call it the Gen Y, but it's basically for people who are born after the 1980s, and I'm certainly one of them. And I kind of can speak to what they're looking for, but may not be I'm not the typical Gen Y. But what I can say is that from what I understood, the Gen Y are definitely looking for the work-life balance, the challenge in the workplace. They don't just come to you because you offer $13.60, which is the minimum wage. They are also asking, what's in it for me? You have an organization. What's your brand? What does your brand offer? What sets you apart from other companies that I can certainly apply for a job if you're offering same kind of pay and benefits, right? So they certainly asked a question different from our older generation, the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer generation comes into the workplace, say, this is what I can offer. Please hire me. I'm not going to hesitate to do the hard work and the heavy lifting work. Whereas the younger generation come into the workplace assessing you just as hard you're assessing them, saying that what's in it for me? What benefits do I get from working for you? And on top of that, still keep my lifestyle. The market demand around us is certainly changing as well. In the traditional days, we were seeing that organizations, companies influence the market by giving certain kinds of prices and qualities and products and services, and using that as a way to influence the consumers. Versus in today's market, it's the other way around. Consumers are the people who tell organizations what kind of services and products I need. So basically, when we are hiring people, it's the kind of talent who understands consumers' preferences and who have that skills to communicate with consumers would be the win-win situation for your organization. And for your social profits, the consumers could certainly be your clients, your customers. It does not have to be the people who are paying for services. And that is why I would like to introduce you to the concept of agile workforce. By show of hands, how many of you have heard about this before? Great, thank you. I guess I can't just speak about anything. I have to really watch what I'm saying because some of you know the concept. That's good. So agility is really about the ability to adapt to change, of response to an altered stimulus in a speedy yet effective manner. It's the strength, coordination, and balance of all the inner elements to react efficiently to something which is new, external, and unprecedented. So according to Jim Link, the Chief Human Resources Officer for Randstad North America, he believes that talent scarcity continues to be top of mind of the executives in North America. And he believes that the future workforce will require high-skilled workers with niche specialties, and workers who will be increasingly content to have an agile career rather than a fixed, permanent job. By 2025, 33% of the North American workforce will actually be occupied by the remote and virtual workers. What does it say to the workplace? We need to start thinking a little bit differently, how we recruit and the kind of people we want, the job we want them to do. Agile workforce is really about what do we want the people to do, our employees, our contractors, our vendors, part-timers, what do we want them to do? Who will carry out this kind of work? Is it the traditional permanent full-timers? Or maybe it's the remote contractors? Maybe it's the volunteers? When do we want people to do the work? Or when can they do the work? And where do people work? I know for our businesses, we have our core business hours. Our doors are open to the public or to our consumers during certain period of time during the day. These are the core hours we need to maintain. Maybe we don't need to have all the office staff working facing the open door during this time. Maybe we can have flexible opportunities offered. If we, outside of our core business hours, what are the flexibility we can provide in order to attract the talent? Without really consulting, before I worked in consulting, I've worked in small, medium, large organizations, including nonprofit sector, as an HR person. I was used to the 9-to-5, Monday through Friday jobs. So, sometimes I'll have the Monday syndrome. I don't call it the weekend hangover syndrome. I call it the Monday syndrome. And you know what that means. Sometimes Friday happy hour comes, I know my productivity wasn't there. Then I started questioning. I said, Jen, why? Professional, is my most productive hours are actually defined by the organization. Not until I start consulting on my own, I actually realized my most productive hours are in the evenings, between 7 to 10 p.m., after I pamper my husband, of course. And then I also realized that it does not matter where I work. As long as I have a phone, a Wi-Fi, and then a computer, it doesn't matter. I often carry my computer with me in the car, so when I drive to meet with clients, I wait, If I have to wait, I pull out my computer, do some work. Last month, I presented the very same topic in Edmonton HR in the Box series, and that was a beautiful fall weather day. After that, I said, I'm not going to waste the time. I brought my computer, drove to a park, ate my sandwich there, and worked in the park. Beautiful day. How many of us would have that luxury if we work in a traditional corporate office and hours are really defined by the organizations, but productivity are not there? So what I'm trying to make you think is outside the box a little bit, redefine the kind of work we do and the method we do the work. Because agile working is about bringing people, processes, connectivity, and technology, time and place together to find the most appropriate and effective way of working to carry out a particular task. And that may sound too complex, too wordy. So my definition, the simplified version, an agile workforce is about workforce that takes into consideration of the changing demand. Whether we want to admit it or not, the workforce around us has slowly evolved. It's the changing demand of customers and the markets while delivering the organizational results that support this demand in a creative way. In one sentence, it's about transforming our work. An agile workforce actually is looking at many, many things. So now, HR professionals in this room, and you have more experience than I do, so now you've heard about the definitions and the history behind the agile workforce. If your organization is developing an agile workforce, do you think the traditional organizational design hierarchical structure that the management span of employees is a couple employees, is that still going to work? That this table talked about the reports needs to be drafted differently, tailored to different leaders. Is that encouraging dialogues? Is that encouraging transparency? Is that a good use of your time? Right? What about the workspace design? We talk a little bit about open concept design, and that's what I think is the way to go. It saves money, it saves energy, and also it's encouraging the 21st century team-based work environments. In terms of workplace design, ATB Financial, yes, go ahead.
All of those trends are geared towards a purely extroverted workforce. And that doesn't work for everybody. So I think we're missing a whole piece of how people work. So being agile, also being responsive to and understanding how individual people work. I don't work well in that. There's too many people. It's distracting. I like people and I like teamwork and I like groupthink, but those open concepts don't work for everybody. And same with it's a trend from the classroom up. Group work, open concept, it assumes that everybody has that extroverted, want to work together all the time personality that can handle that constant stimulation. I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And actually, I got the same question from a lady in this morning session. She came to me saying that she's an introvert and she's a manager. She's sitting together with her 3 other employees in a really open concept. And I gave her the same comment like you do, that it may not work for everybody. I used to have my own office as an HR person. And then until I moved into this new office building, and there are like tons of them around me. And when I had to deal with terminations or employee relations issues, I'm on the phone all the time. So that's what works, is that instead of having a fixed phone, I had a mobile phone. So I can walk as I talk. And then actually I have talked about the communication style and work style with the people around me. What's your preferred style? Let's talk about it. The people sit close to me because I'm on the phone all the time and I'm on the computer all the time. So then we reach an agreement that if we need to take an important call that's going to take more than 3 minutes, let's go find a corner. There are conference rooms, don't get me wrong. Open concept does not mean there are no doors at all. It just means that lots of people sit together. And if you look at Facebook, if you look at Google, they're the biggest ones that's promoting for the open concept. Facebook actually is the biggest in the world in terms of open concept design. People sit like in a manufacturing setting. And that's what they encourage as the design thinking, as the collaboration. That's the way to go going forward. But as an HR professional, we all know there is no perfect solution in today's society, right? Is there? Yeah, exactly. And I suffer through that myself too. It probably took me 3 months to get used to it. But once I got used to it and I made an agreement with the neighbors around me, then we start working together quite well. It actually keeps me on my toes that I get to hear about information and everybody hears the same information. It actually reduces the rumors a little bit to some extent and keeps everybody on the same page, whether that's a good thing or not. And can I just finish this comment? Yeah, thank you, Laurie. And also what I was talking about is that with ATB Financial, they're really good at promoting this kind of concept. Instead of marrying people to the desk and location, they're actually marrying people to the job. So in a few branches in Edmonton, what they had was that people can arrange work from home once per week. Of course, they have to agree with the managers in advance. And then once they come, there is no name tag on the door or on the desk, as whoever comes first will take whichever space available. And when I joined a really traditional organization, people were fighting to find the best seat for themselves when we had a move in terms of where we sit. And some older employees or more senior employees had the opportunity to choose where they could sit. And I was the last one to say where I want to sit because that's the least in my mind. That's the least important. I'm here to do a good job, to get along with people. I'm not here to fight for a seat. That's not my home. It's not my coach, right? Why would I care that much? So, and then another thing in terms of workplace design is that where I teach right now is McEwen University in Edmonton. And McEwen University has received some funding and also investment in building a completely new open concept classroom building. Really fancy. And on the first floor, they're going to have lots of space designed for incubator operations for nonprofit organizations. So instead of nonprofit organizations struggling with budget, struggling with money, renting a space on a permanent basis or on longer-term basis, sign a lease, they would come to this incubator space, rent it on a temporary, short-term period, and then they're going to share the kitchen, they're sharing the bathroom, and they're also sharing the conference space with other nonprofits who also come to rent the space. Imagine the atmosphere. You are having your office, you have a closed door, don't get me wrong, and then once you need to talk and collaborate with others, you come out to the common area. And the costs have been saved because you're renting it temporarily and you're sharing the resources with other nonprofits who share the same kind of concerns and challenges. On top of that, because you're bringing people together because of the physical space, also they're trying to bring in is the shared services model in terms of IT, finance, HR, and so on and so forth, which I think is probably the way to go. Because in Canada, 97% or more is small business. Small business, which means less than 100 people per company. And we're just going to see that coming more and more. And I have done lots of career transitions with companies laying off people and also helping people to move on to their next opportunity. I have seen employees, I've seen people who have come off from one career, either going back to school so they can do something else in their life or upgrade their knowledge, or they start a small business of their own because they can't find another suitable opportunity. And also, actually, when people going through changes in careers and life, that's a perfect opportunity for them to reflect on their work values, who they are, what they want to be, where they want to be next. Yeah, we need privacy and confidentiality.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. It's a comment rather than a question. So Laurie was saying that as an HR professional, it's an oxymoron that we need privacy, maintain confidentiality of the work we do, and yet we're sharing the space with a whole bunch of others. Yes. So in the company that I worked at, we did have the open concept. We also had a clean desk policy, which means when you're not physically there, everything has to be off the desk. Yeah. Thank you, Marcy. Give me time to have a sip of water. And then today we're going to talk about recruitment a little bit more. Benefits and compensation. When it comes to an agile workforce, basically what I'm trying to ask you to rethink is about the benefits and compensation structure. Are we offering the best compensation structure and benefits and pension plan to our employees the way that's supporting today's workforce? So for example, in the baby boomers generations, employees are looking for stability. They're looking for career growth. They believe career growth comes from hard work and stability and showing the right attitude, right? So in the old days, the DB, the defined benefits pension plan, was very popular and still is prevalent, I have to say. You see the public organizations, the government organizations, still is a big favor of the DB plan. Whereas more and more, when the organization is becoming more progressive, you're seeing the more DC plan, the defined contribution plan. The difference between the two is that the defined benefits pension plan is that employers are bearing the risk because employees know exactly how much pension money they're going to collect by the time they retire, times how many years they've worked in the organization, times a fraction of a ratio. Versus the defined contribution plan, the risk is transferred to the employee. The employee may choose to invest or not into a company-funded pension plan, and they choose the funds they want to invest in, and that does not guarantee anything when they retire. It's like fluctuates with the markets. However, you are giving the option to the younger generation to choose their destiny for their pension. And on top of that, in the past, I've seen organizations offer fixed benefits plans. So it's a set menu. So I'm not giving you any choices. Employee, you have to share the cost with me as an employer, and you have all these services that either you use it or not. These are things you have to pay. Versus when you have a younger generation coming to workforce, the first question they ask is, what are my options? Isn't it? We grow up and we live in a society of so many options. So it's the same thing when it comes into the workplace. The first question asked is, what are my choices? With these days, the more organizations would rather choose a benefits plan that's a flex plan, which means employees can choose the kind of benefits that suit their situations. Maybe they're single, they don't need dental, they don't need vision that much, versus someone who has a big family and companions and all that stuff. Their life needs are totally different. And then I've seen small organizations and social profits would offer just a lump sum of healthcare spending account, let's say $300 per year. Employees can use it for medical-related, health-related purposes, and if they don't use everything, then the dollar gets carried over to the next year within the time limits. So what I'm trying to say here is that there are many things we need to think about when we are trying to define agile workforce. What about employee management and communication? Does the traditional top-down approach still work? Is the information still be filtered by the layers of positions you represent in the organization? Or should we have a flatter structure of organization? Employees participate in decision-making process. And that's where the team-based project comes into place. And then what about training and development? We heard from Jackie, right? Yeah, we heard from Jackie that sometimes we put on training opportunities that it's hard to fill the seats. Why is that? Is it just because that the economy is so bad that employers cannot afford to have employees away from the desk for 3 hours, half a day? I think that's one part of it, of course. And being some employers now taking advantage of the Alberta Job Grant or Canada Job Grant, of course. I'm doing advertisement for them. The other thing it really has to do with how we deliver the training. And what kind of training are we delivering to the employees and to the companies? Are we still offering the traditional lecture style, classroom style? Are we offering opportunities for them to do some casework together, for them to make discussions, to solve a real case, a real work problem that they can go home, go back to work, and really use it right away? Because as HR professionals, we all know that the transfer of learning is very, very low. You may retain as much information as you can from a presentation, from a training, but when you go back to your workplace, if you don't use it, how much is it going to left after a week? And never review the material. We all know that, right? We were all students once. When we do midterm and final exams, we remember definitions for the purpose of the exams. I'm guilty as charged. When I did my CPHR designation exams, at that time we had 2 national exams, and I was really good at memorizing definitions. But if you quiz me after a week after the exam, I probably remember half of that. And also is the way how we deliver the training. Classroom setting is one thing. Maybe webinar will be another way. Is that so the employees don't have to be away from a desk for too long to travel to another location of some sort. Another thought would be maybe to have organizations small size, but with similar challenges coming together, attend training, attend conferences, then you share the costs all together. So these are just opportunities and basically questions I'm asking you to think about, rethink about talent, attraction, and management. This may look overwhelming, that you think, oh, in order to build an agile workforce, we need to redo everything that we do in HR and management. Not exactly. It's one step at a time. So don't overwhelm yourself. Do whatever makes sense to your organization, because each organization's culture, politics, history, best practices are different. So now, discussion time. With adult learners, and this is another tip for training development, with adult learners, our attention span is only 25 minutes. We're a little bit shorter than the kids. So we need to stand up, move around, chat, get some fresh water and coffee. So now I would like to use the next 5 minutes to challenge you to get up and walk around, get your water, coffee, and think about on yourself, what are the changing demands of my organization? And what are the impacts on recruitment? So 5 minutes. Okay, all right, back to me. And I'm first going to ask the online audience, Volunteer Alberta, is there any comments or questions about the slides right here? Nothing so far, great. Now it's back to the tables time. So what would be your table's answer? What are the changing demands of your organization?
I think the biggest thing is just the variety of people that come live in Fort McMurray, the diverse personalities and intertwining everybody and making everybody just happy.
Great, so the diversity. Yeah, the diversity of the workforce, great. And what about this table over here? What are the changing demands you've seen?
For our organization, it's more changing demands of our clients as well as the stakeholders that fund us. So that's probably the biggest challenge that we have.
Okay. Great. So Michelle has actually touched on what we talk about. Today's society, the market demands, it comes from the consumers, right? The external stakeholders that determines how our organizations are going to be run, especially for the social profit and small businesses. And to Pauline's point is that the diversity in today's society, especially given the location that we're in here. So what does diversity mean to you then? That's my question back to you.
Well, it's diversity in different ways. It could be like cultural diversity, it could be gender diversity, it could be diversity in terms of skill set and, you know, ideas and how you arrange work to ensure there is diversity within the teams.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Danny. That's a very good point. So diversity comes from demographic background. It's the age, the gender, the ethnical backgrounds, the ideas, the skill sets, the education, and also the beliefs, and also the disabilities, whether it's physical or mental. Sometimes it's not obvious at all. So all of these things contribute to the workforce. It's not a matter of if we're going to see diversity that we have to manage it and start to shift the way how we do talent attraction and management. It's actually a matter of when your organization start finally going to do that. Thank you for your comments. So before we talk about agile recruitment, I want to emphasize a few things about recruitment in general. Before we hire people, we need to think about the why, because we all know that hiring people is very costly in terms of time, energy, effort, upsetness to some extent, and money. So in my opinion, we need to hire people based on 6 different reasons. Number 1 is growth. With small organizations and social profits, the organizations grow organically because there is a huge demand, a better demand for the services and products that we offer. It could be that the organization has transitioned from the manual labor kind of work into more automatic work. So now we need to hire people with different skill sets in order to lift our company. Maybe we're hiring people due to retirement. We live in the aging population. Regardless of aging population, still we see the baby boomers holding leadership or managerial or senior technical positions, not wanting to give it up. It could be that they're healthier. We live longer these days. We die later, so they don't want to just sit at home and do nothing. It could also be financially they can't retire. Or it could be that they are wanting to do something else in their life. Once they retire, they just don't know what and how yet. So as HR people or professionals, we need to ask, when people give us notice about retirement, we need to think about to ourselves, how soon are they going to retire? Do they need a phased retirement? How are we going to transition the knowledge out of them and still not leaving any gap in the workplace? Maybe we can talk to them about working part-time hours for a few months and transition and train succession planning with the new hire, and then eventually bridge that gap in knowledge and have that person move on to a different life stage. Maybe we are hiring people due to leave of absence. We've seen people going back to school, they take leave of absence from work temporarily. Could be that employees are going on this short-term and long-term disability, take a leave of absence. We need to backfill these positions temporarily. It could also be people taking on sabbatical leave these days. One organization I worked at, the organization supported a lady to take a vacation with family to travel to Asia for 5 months. We kept her position and intact, without pay during the 5 months, of course, but allowing her the flexibility to explore something completely different in her life. And we backfilled her position temporarily during the time of leave of absence. We're giving the employee a lot of creative flexibility for them to feel still engaged in the workforce. And then, of course, due to the attrition, determination, and resignation. When we think about factors involved in recruitment, the reason is one of them. The cost is another thing. Research I've read that in 2016, the Society of Human Resources Management in the States has produced the average time to hire a professional employee takes 42 days. What about the work that we need to get done during the 42 days? Who is covering that? Is it the manager? Or is it the employees around the employee who has left, picking up the slack? Do we have to pay overtime? What about the decrease in morale? What about the drop in productivity? These are all costs. What about getting the hiring managers together to do interviews? What about getting HR and admin people to do the data entry and paperwork and sourcing, posting the jobs on different sources? What about once we finally have our new hire and it takes them a long time to be trained and on board? Because with a frontline customer service simple position can take up to a month to fully onboard that person, to be fully equipped to do the job. And for a senior level position, really complex organization, it can take up between 1 to 2 years to be fully on board and equipped. Okay, so Michelle said that she currently has that experience in the organization. Thank you for echoing what I just said. So my point is that when we hire, we need to think about the cost, the people, and the time involved in order to have an effective recruitment approach. Finally, we also need to think about the politics. What's the culture inside the organization? That's what we're talking about is hiring for fit. We heard that term on and on all the time. What exactly is hiring for fit? Is that person can come in, really fit in the politics and culture of the organization. I can't be more direct than that. And when we talk about politics, maybe it's also something we need to explore is that why did the previous person leave? Is it the hiring manager? Is it the direct manager we need to talk to and do something with first before we can have the position backfilled successfully? What about organizational changes? What about collective bargaining agreements? What about past practices? We need to take into account all of these things in order to have a really effective talent attraction recruitment process. Traditionally, when we hire people, we go through a lengthy process. Identify the recruitment need and don't forget to identify a budget. Do a job analysis, create job description, transfer that into a posting and post on different sources. We shortlist, then we interview, and then we evaluate the interview results. We do background checks, we make offer, we notify the unsuccessful people, and then we start hiring, we do the onboarding process. And then traditionally, when we hire people, we're basically asking 3 questions. And these are questions that I have summarized based on my experience of hiring people and in terms of things we're looking for. Number 1 is, can the person do the job? Does the person have the technical knowledge, skills, education, and abilities to do the job that you want that person to do? That's the number 1 thing we're assessing here. And what about, will the candidate do the job? Does the person have the attitude? Roll up the sleeves and can-do attitude. Does the person have the soft skills that we require to do the job? What about the politics, the culture piece? Will the person fit in? So these are 3 key things that I suggest we ask ourselves through the recruitment selection process to assess a candidate. But what's changed in terms of the agile recruitment is we need to first define our organization as a whole. What is the core competency of our organization? By core competency, I'm not saying the physical or financial assets. I'm basically saying what sets our organization apart. What makes our organization basically? What makes you you? So what's the competitive advantage that my organization has, the reason for us to exist in business compared to the competitors? These are the core businesses we're in, and these are the core things we need to identify before we can ask an agile employee come in to do a really great job. And the non-core competencies are basically things that are defined outside of the core competencies. It's the non-value add work, but you still have to do. Ask yourself, you already done the checklist for yourself, ask yourself, how much time do I spend every day doing the non-core work that are non-core associated with the organization, that's a non-core associated with my job, and that's also non-core associated with my career path, my career goals as well. So in terms of recruitment steps, I re-summarized the traditional recruitment steps into 6 new steps. Number 1 is what are the core competencies of the organization. So define that for yourself. Why does my organization exist in business? What sets us apart? And what kind of workers can do the job that we want them to do? Remember now, we're not talking about the traditional approach that someone leaves, we have to backfill the position. No, we're talking about what are the core competency of the organization that we need to hire people to do these critical jobs. And the kind of workers that you can hire to do these jobs, I challenge you again to think outside the box a little bit. And here I have provided some examples. Traditionally, we always think about employees. Nowadays, I heard Jen talk about being a contractor as part of her employment transition period. And that's actually very common these days. And organizations use a lot of contractors to do the job. Michelle and I had a conversation during the break as well. She's hiring a lot of contractors to do the job. These contractors, although may not leave you with lots of knowledge that you can groom your current workforce, but they at least get the job done. So hopefully the contractors are doing the non-core competency work for your organization. So you still have the job produced and you still serve the organizational purposes. Full-timers versus part-timers. I've seen the banks, the major banks in Edmonton, not hiring permanent full-time employees anymore. In a recession situation like this, I mean, they do once in a while, but a lot of the tellers are filled by new grads, new university graduates, and doing part-time work, and rotate them between the branches. Wherever they need people, they put the new grads into a different location. With that being said, the recruitment process is still very, very rigorous and very lengthy and competitive. It speaks about competition in today's market because of talents markets we're in. But organizations are exploring part-timers opportunities because they don't have to pay benefits. They can let people go a little bit easier than if they are permanent full-timers. And also part-time opportunities offer employees, especially younger generation, more options to think about, I can work for you to get some experience. I can also work for somewhere else. Maybe I can go to school at the same time. Maybe I can get other work experience at the same time. Hiring experienced versus the non-experienced. This is an interesting phenomenon that yesterday, Monday, in my HR class at McMurray University, I had a guest speaker coming from a recruitment agency, spoke to my students. And him and I echo the same comments, is that these days when you pull off a job description, employers are really looking for a senior level of experience, 3 to 5 plus, even though when you look at the duties, they could be super junior. Why is that? It's because employers in today's economy have a lot of choices to make. They can pick and choose very easily. And my guest speaker and I, we were also chatting about, we were joking that he once had a client told him that the client wants someone with 3 years of this particular software experience to come into an organization. And he said, well, my friend, the software has only been in the market for 2 years. You won't be able to find someone with 3 years of experience. That's an anecdote. But my point here is that think about experienced workers versus the non-experienced. How much money can you save by hiring someone who is a little bit less experienced but would really, really appreciate the opportunity? The attitude will actually determine a lot. If the difference between the experienced versus non-experienced is not that huge, the attitude will actually set them apart. What about employee versus volunteer? I've heard from Sonia, she mentioned that when she go look for a job for interviews, nobody has ever asked if she would like to be a volunteer. What a loss in opportunity. I would say if I ever run a nonprofit organization, I'll definitely ask, you present yourself really well, would you like to be volunteers for us to start off with? My clients in Edmonton, some of them are in the nonprofit sector, a little bit bigger ones, they have a pool of about 100 to 200 volunteers. And their regular volunteers will probably be about 30 to 50 volunteers. So these regular volunteers will volunteer for them for extended period of time, half a year, or beyond. And the really, really best performed ones eventually become their employees, whether it's full-time or part-time or contractors. Because by then, the nonprofit organization would have already assessed these people's characters, past probation, and their work abilities. So why not? It's a win-win for both sides. Even if the volunteers would never move on to become an employee, at least they can get good reference and they can move on in their career as well. So it's a win-win for both organization and the volunteers. Fixed time versus the flex time. And as I mentioned, if your business have a core business hour, you have to be there, open the door to see the customers, then by all means be it. But with the outside of these hours that if you have employees to work, think about what flexibility can I offer. I've seen lots of stay-home moms and dads come back to the workplace because of the recession. Their spouse got laid off. They don't have choice but to come back to workforce. Yes, there is a huge gap in their skill sets because they've been out of the workforce for a few years. But I have lots of sympathy towards these people. I look more at their housekeeping skills, keeping 3 children at home and still, managing all the household items and still wanting to come back to work. That's a huge skill to have. That's a lot of qualifications right there to start off with. So what can we do to offer flexibility in the workplace? Maybe it's the time that we can make it a little bit more flexible so we can attract these people. Same to students as well. My students in the class, they all have school full-time. They still want to get part-time work experience or in a summer job or internship for full-time. In terms of hiring direction, we can think about acquire people or develop people from within. And local versus global talents, especially I remember when I first started doing HR work about 10 years ago, economy in Alberta was booming at that time. It was really hard to hire people. The candidates would jump to our organization's competitors for $1.50 more per hour. It was super hard to hire. At that time, we had to look at relocate people outside of Edmonton, outside of the province, sometimes even outside of the country. I don't know for outside of country situation at this moment yet, but definitely look beyond just the region that we are currently sitting in right now. So that's the second step. After we've identified the core competencies of our company, we talk about what kind of workers we need to fulfill these roles, what are the options. Then we look at what are the non-core work. If the non-value added work is taking a lot of our time, what can we do with them? Can we offboard them to delegate to junior staff, to volunteers, to students? Or can we eliminate them through automation or through some other systems? Number 4, what can we change internally to make our organizations more attractive to the current workforce, the diversity we spoke about? And what can we do to be more creative that we spend less and still recruit? And then at the end, where can we find these candidates? A thought process. This is one of my favorite organizational charts. I have to give credit, I copy and paste from Google. But what I like about this is to really challenge people to think outside the box about the traditional organizational design and structure. I have a home office. I do not have a permanent office location. And then if you have an organization with employees on flex time, employee satellite office, same country, different country, independent contractors, telecommuters, vendors. That's an organization itself. This concept is actually getting more and more popular. I know what you think. As social enterprise, as social organizations, it's a little bit hard to have employees in satellite offices in different countries. You probably don't need to look that far, but it's certainly possible to have vendors and telecommuters and independent contractors and employees on flex times to still get the job done. For my small organization, I have 3 staff. None of them work with me in the same office. They all have their full-time job, full-time school, whatever case they're doing. They work for me as project basis, as on-need basis. I tell them at the beginning of the month, these are things I want you to get done. Tell me when and how. Any questions? Go. I care to see the results. If they have questions throughout the way, they know how to get hold of me. And same with talent pool in Calgary. So during lunchtime, Nicole and I talked about how many staff work for talent pool. And Nicole said, you're looking at it. So she is the only full-time employee for talent pool. The rest of them are contractors. Exactly. Contractors still get a job done, but you don't have as much a legal obligation in terms of employment. Oof. Okay, great. So you have here, I'm going to give out, thank you, a short case that we're going to work together, use some brain power at your table based on concept we just learned. It's a nonprofit organization, has 70 full-time employees, 30 regular volunteers, and another big pool of volunteers on an irregular basis. The executive director had been looking for an HR manager for 4 months, unable to fill it for different reasons. The board of directors is not happy, and the board of directors thought that if the position is non-existent for 4 months, they probably can run without it. The organization offers $60K as per year per annum salary, $500 in healthcare spending accounts, free parking, discounted childcare, so on and so forth. Questions for your team is that, number one, what functions of the HR manager's job could be considered core competency? What would be considered a non-core competency? Question number two, what recommendations would you give to this organization based on the agile workforce concept we just talked about? So I'll give you 15 minutes. All right, this group seems a little quiet. I'm assuming you ladies are finished. Can we hear some answers? Yeah. What would you consider as the core competency for this HR manager's job?
Well, it's a pretty sizable organization. So the core competencies to me are managing and providing HR and benefits management to your employees, and not volunteer management is big on its own, because that volunteer workforce is 3 times the size of the actual employees. So yeah, 60 isn't even close for that.
What about the non?
Well, the non-core work would be what they want to download onto that person is the HR or the volunteer management duties, which is not a part of HR. And I think it's probably one of the main reasons they're not getting anybody, because they want to hire one person for 2 or 3 jobs.
Thank you. And let's hear from this table. What would you consider as the core work?
So for core competencies, we said that strategic direction would be a big piece. And then for non-core, we also was a volunteer management piece as well. We can't really you need to have another position for that. Yeah. So it's very similar.
Yeah, great. So I see there is common agreement. That's great. So there is no competition between the 2 tables. What would you consider as your recommendations for this organization in terms of agile recruitment?
We suggested a couple of different things, is to perhaps look at the resources internally, to redistribute some of the expectations that they have in the job description. And there may be skilled volunteers in their volunteer pool. We forgot about that.
Thank you very much. And let's hear from this table.
Yeah, we also talked about, what are they trying to achieve with piling up all those different tasks into one position? So are they looking for an office manager, giving them 2 admins, and they're not specifying they're HR admins, but assumption is they're just regular admins. So are they looking for an office manager? In this case, change the title, change the description, and then repost, and you might be lucky enough to get someone. Or if they're looking for an HR manager, can they lower the expectations for experience and get somebody a little bit more junior, but clearly define the HR duties and scope of the work?
Exactly. Very good point. Thank you very much. So let me ask you this question. All of you work in different organizations. Would $60,000 plus $500 in healthcare spending accounts good enough to attract an HR manager with 5 to 7 years of experience? Yeah, not a chance in here, right? So basically, I see that's another issue is that compensation may be an issue to attract someone with that kind of senior experience to work for the organization, plus all the load of duties. So clearly, the organization has now to really think through this very well, very thoroughly. So I thought about this case a little bit different. So I agree with all of your ladies' answers. Thank you very much for the participation. And on top of that, I just want to make a few points in terms of the core competency work. I would really ask the executive director as well as the board of directors, what do you want this person to do? That would be my first question. Let's clarify that. So is it a strategic HR planning? Maybe it's non-existent in this organization. Apparently, they're kind of immature in doing their planning. So is it a strategic HR planning that you want the manager to do? Is it setting up the compensation benefit structure? Is it policies and procedures, employee relations issues? These are what I would consider as the core competency work for this HR manager's job. The non-core competency could be the payroll, could be the benefits administration, the day-to-day administration, could be the recruitment, could be the training and development piece. So with all due respect to all different aspects of HR functions, these may be non-core competency work for this particular organization. And plus, on top of that, managing 2 admin staff, is it because they have nobody else good enough to manage admin people? What about the volunteer management job, right? You ladies are right. That seems like just a full-time job on its own. So with the core competency work, so let's say we assume we clarified what the core competency jobs are, then let's talk about, because compensation is so low and the organization's been having this position vacant for so long, they're not willing to pay more, as we can see. So maybe having a consultant or a part-time HR senior person come in to get the policy set, structure set, planning set, and then train the current leaders of the organization to move forward. The non-core competency work may be outsourced. Maybe the admin people can do it. Maybe hire a junior HR person to do it, HR student to do it. And that, if you are grooming someone from within the organization and give them additional volunteer management duties or managing admin staff or managing payroll and benefits administration, that may add another layer of complexity to the current junior staff's job, which will be considered a challenge and which may consider be as a career growth for the current employees. So basically dividing up the HR manager's non-core competency work into something else and also offer the opportunities to grow current staff. But the key first question definitely would be, what do you want the HR manager to do here? So that's my personal opinion in terms of this exercise. And then when it comes to agile recruitment, we assess the candidates still based on the 3 questions in a slightly different way. Can the candidate do the job? So in this situation, we have assessed the core competency of the job and the non-core competency of the job. Can the candidate do the core competency of the job? Will the candidate do the core competency of the job? And then last but not least, will this candidate fit into an agile environment? There is a question from Volunteer Alberta. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. High five. And high five, I'm towards the end. So basically, at the end, I would just want to remind, this is my pet peeve. This is something I always leave with my clients, with my students, or anybody I talk to, being the HR ambassador. We, as the HR people or the hiring manager, are the first to faced by the candidates. Their opinion of our organizations are given by us. As we're assessing the candidates, they're assessing us just as critically, especially facing a younger generation. And they're picky to some extent sometimes, but they're very selective. They want to get a good sense of your organization and you as the hiring manager. So let's please make sure that we are demonstrating the agile traits in our hiring process. We carry passion for our organization. If we don't speak confident about our organization, if we don't carry the enthusiasm in our hiring practices, the candidates will not have the confidence in our organizations. And we envision an agile future, and also we please let the candidates know about the results, whether they're successful or not. I have had once gone through 6 rounds of interviews, each round with different people, and each round was over an hour, super difficult. At the end of 6 rounds of interviews, I still don't know what's going on. I said to them, enough is enough. I'm not interested in this kind of hiring practice that actually tells me about the kind of culture I may jump into. So thank you. I'm quitting this opportunity. With the amount of energy and time and emotional involvement into the recruitment process, our candidates, especially those ones being interviewed, deserve an answer, even if it's as simple as saying thanks but no thanks this time. It's about our reputation. It's about our professional behaviors. Because for an organization, it takes a very long time to build a solid reputation. It takes a very small incident to destroy it, especially in a unique situation like we are having here at Fort McMurray. It's difficult to recruit talents. So with that being said, that concludes my presentation this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed the discussions and questions that you ladies have challenged me with. And here is my contact information. You also have that my PowerPoint slides along with my contact information and in the USB disk. I also have my business cards and brochures here if you care to pick one. Thank you very much.